These are the wooden pieces for the frame of the CubeSat. Each are individually numbered off starting at 1.1 to easily find each piece while following the steps. These are the internal components that fit inside the frame, giving it life to record data and capture images. The components are numbered off starting at 2.1. These are the 3 types of screws you will be using to fasten the components. Each are labeled with the letters A, B, and C in the steps. These are the pillars that hold the components in the frame, which are labeled D. After completing all the steps, this is what the final product will look like. So with all of the parts in mind, let's start to construct the QbSat. Mount the Raspberry Pi labeled 2.1 with 440 screws labeled A to the plate that says Raspberry Pi labeled 1.7. You will need the multiplexer labeled 2.4, the plate labeled 1.6, the battery labeled 2.3, and the screws labeled A. Mount the multiplexer labeled 2.5 and PDB labeled 2.4 with 440 screws labeled A to the plate labeled 1.6 in their respective spots. Then mount the battery labeled 2.3 to its spot using double-sided tape. You will need the cameras labeled 2.6 and 2.7, the plate labeled 1.5, and the screws labeled B. Screw in the 2 cameras labeled 2.6 and 2.7 to the bottom plate labeled 1.5 using M2.5 screws labeled B. Make sure to put the screws in the opposite side from the cameras. You will need the parts numbered 2.2, 1.1, and the A screws. Screw in the EnviroPlus air quality board labeled 2.2 to the front panel labeled 1.1. Make sure to put the screws labeled A in from the side that says QbSat. This is a QbSat wiring diagram. To the left is a complete diagram of all the wiring besides the ribbon cables. The Raspberry Pi has 40 pins on it, which are labeled from left to right going down the chart. The EnviroPlus and the multiplexer are labeled in the same way as if they were mounted directly on top of the Raspberry Pi, as shown in these images. In the middle is the wiring for the multiplexer. The ribbon cable port opposite of the screws is plugged into the camera port on the Raspberry Pi. It does not matter what camera is plugged into the other 2 ports on the multiplexer. The charts on the right show the pin-to-pin connections between the Raspberry Pi, the multiplexer, and the EnviroPlus. Follow the diagram to complete the wiring for the EnviroPlus. When wiring the multiplexer to the Raspberry Pi, make sure to route the cables through the slot on the layer. Next is attaching the ribbon cables to the cameras. First, undo the latches on both cameras and insert the ribbon cables in both ports and close the latches on both cameras as seen in these images. Now attach the ends of the ribbon cables into the multiplexer. Now attach the multiplexer to the Raspberry Pi using a ribbon cable. Make sure the ribbon cable goes through the slot on layer 2 to the multiplexer as shown in the image. For this step, you will need a micro SD card and adapter in order to download the software onto the SD card from the computer. Insert the SD card into the adapter and insert the adapter into the designated slot on your device. Now head over to raspberrypi.com/software or click the link in the description to install the Raspberry Pi Imager in order to flash the software on the micro SD card. Now go through the wizard to finish installing the Raspberry Pi Imager. Now that the Raspberry Pi Imager is installed, head over to the QbSat Google Drive and click the folder labeled SD card images to install the version 1.1 image. Note that this will take a while to download. Once the image version 1.1 has downloaded, open up the Raspberry Pi Imager and click Choose OS. Select Use Custom, then browse to the image file that you downloaded. Now click Choose Storage and select your micro SD card. Then click Write to flash the SD card with the software. Once the SD card is done writing, it will start to verify, which will also take a while. Once the micro SD card is finished verifying, take out the micro SD card and insert it into the QbSat, then turn on the QbSat.
To use the software, make sure the QbSat is on. Once the QbSat is on, it will display a Wi-Fi signal to connect to. Once connected, go to a web browser and type in the search bar 192.168.4.1, which will take you to the QbSat interface. In the QbSat control panel, the satellite will already start to display live data and real-time images from both cameras. To record data, click the Start/Stop Recording button. The button will display a message when you are recording. When you are satisfied with the amount of data that you have recorded, press the same button again to stop recording. To view your data that you just recorded, click Downloads in the top right of the control panel. You will see a .zip file. Click on the .zip file to download it and unzip it. Once in the file, you will see two folders in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet contains all the data from the EnviroPlus that was taken during the recording. The folders labeled Camera A and Camera B both contain images that were captured from both cameras during the recording. If you want to delete your recording, click the Delete All Logs button and refresh the page. And the Advanced tab in the top right contains a reboot button that restarts the website and also has some information on how to change the Wi-Fi name and password on the QbSat. This was an overview on how to navigate the QbSat control panel. The software on phones will work the same way as if you were using a computer. First, connect to the QbSat in your Wi-Fi settings. Then open a web browser and type in 192.168.4.1. To record data, tap the Start/Stop Recording button. To view the data, tap the menu icon in the top right, then tap Downloads to get the .zip file. The file will contain the spreadsheet with the data and 2 folders with images taken from each camera. If you want to delete your recording, tap the Delete All Logs button, then refresh the page. This was an overview of the QbSat control panel on phones.